Hey everyone, I'm Ken Klippenstein with Breaking Points Intercept Edition. I'm joined today by my colleague Daniel Boguslaw, who had a killer story yesterday about our water rights, our precious resources here in the United States being sold to a foreign country in a state, Arizona, in which they're undergoing a serious water shortage. Can we get element one up there to show everyone what the headline of the article looks like? Lobbyist for Saudi alfalfa company desiccating Arizona was elected to Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. So this is an actual lobby. This is a lobbyist for a Saudi company going on to work on a state government board that has oversight of water issues. Daniel, can you tell us what you found?
Sure. So this story is partially about corporate capture. It's partially about foreign capital investment in the United States. And it's also about local regional water politics. What my story showed was that Thomas Galvin, a lobbyist for the Rose Law Group, which is a law firm in Arizona that represents numerous corporate interests, specifically many which are focused on land acquisition and land rights, lobbied on behalf of Fondamont, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of a large Saudi farming and dairy production company. This company realized that they could basically buy up farmland in Arizona in a county with very little water regulations. And by doing that, they were able to pump almost unlimited water, grow alfalfa, and then ship that alfalfa back to Saudi Arabia onto their dairy farms. So before he was appointed to the board, Galvin served as a lobbyist. He appeared in the state assembly to advocate for fewer restrictions on monitoring of the company's groundwater usage. And he was subsequently appointed to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors in 2001 to fill a vacancy, then was subsequently elected in 2022 to fill that position again.
So with water rights and them talking about rationing and limiting the use of water in Arizona, how was this an election issue for him? I mean, you're the one that broke it, so clearly it wasn't, but how is that not?
It was pretty shocking to see that this did not come up. He ran with very little opposition for the seat, but in statewide politics, this has become a big issue. It's become a flashpoint in the governor's race. The Democratic candidate called for an investigation into the company. But I think really what this represents is a breakdown of any sort of regulatory oversight, be it a foreign-owned company like the Saudi Arabian one operating this farm, or these massive land developers that are coming in, building houses where there should not be houses, building houses where there's not adequate groundwater or where there's not adequate access to Colorado River water, and continuing to build, helping a small handful of rich profiteers grow wealthier at the cost of constituents' access to water and the livability of the state.
Let me just ask you, what are the Saudis? So they use it for alfalfa farms? So they're buying our water, which people here need to drink, and they're not even using it for, residential use in the sense of them drinking. They're just using it for alfalfa that then they give to livestock, I assume?
Yeah, so a lot of the coverage of this has described what's happening on this Arizona farm as the export of water. They're shipping alfalfa, but really people are framing it as the wholesale export of U.S. water into an arid climate
right.
in Saudi.
Right, that makes sense. How is this not a huge political flashpoint? Because people need water to drink. This is a precious resource that I would imagine, if anything is like of a national security concern, it's going to be stuff that you need to drink every day to live. And you would expect there to be all kind of outrage about this sort of thing.
There is lots of outrage in the state. I think a piece of the complexity here is the fact that all sorts of large corporations, whether they're developers, whether they're big agro, depend on massive amounts of water pumping. So I think part of the balancing act that has emerged during this process is the desire from constituents and local elected officials to crack down on what they see as a foreign investment in Arizona's groundwater. At the same time, their pockets are stuffed with cash from all sorts of other interest groups which similarly rely on massive water consumption. So once you begin to regulate one piece of the equation,
Right.
it opens up Pandora's box for regulations that they might not be so fond of.
One part of your story that I thought was really telling was how this lobbyist, before he was put up for election, he was appointed, and I think he was appointed unanimously by the board, which tells you something.
Absolutely.
You know?
It tells you that there is a somewhat bipartisan consensus on support for corporate interest groups. And I think another fascinating piece of this story is the reality that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors has become a flashpoint in right-wing GOP election denial politics, right? This was something we saw a lot during the election that Trump won.
We're seeing now the governor is refusing to.
And again, we're seeing it again where there was a delay, there was an issue with the voting machines, and the sort of conspiracy theorists come out of the woodwork. But I think that a piece of the catalyst for that conspiracy, for that anxiety, for that madness is the fact that time and time again, even the so-called moderate politicians who sit on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors have allied themselves with interest groups which are opposed to constituents' wants and needs. And so when you see that happen over and over and over again, people getting steamrolled by corporate interests, it breeds a intense and deranged hostility towards the system.
And apparently not even domestic American corporations. That's not, it's now corporations on the other side of the world that, you know, we're not going to see anything from in terms of the, you know, money and resources being spent on things domestically.
Right. And you know, I think this ties into some of your reporting where you've shown there's a concerted top-down effort from Saudi leadership to mobilize economic means as a cudgel against political groups, namely Democrats.
Oh, right. The power they exercise here in Washington, it's almost tactile. They have so much influence over the think tanks, over the revolving door that exists between folks in government who leave. And you know, when I was a younger reporter, I thought, oh, they're out of government. They're going to tell me, you know, what was going on in the Persian Gulf. They don't want to talk about it because they're going to get a contract from these guys or a sinecure or whatever it is.
Absolutely, and that's been the case for decades. I mean, I remember seeing a compilation of New York Times articles stretching back decades where, you know, every 2 years there's a headline, you know, Saudi is liberalizing, Saudi leadership is liberalizing.
Forever liberalizing.
You know, and you could go decade by decade.
Do you remember, my favorite
headline.
one is Thomas Friedman, the op-ed. He says, he says the Arab Spring, the Saudi winter, I think it was, and he's going to come and liberate everybody. And
but again, what we're talking about there, right, is a focus on Saudi leadership, right? This top-down idea, and as your reporting showed, they've been very successful at wielding their economic weapons against political interest groups that they view as disaligned with their incentives. However, what my story showed is a window into the way that a more diffuse economic spread, in this case, you know, in an agricultural area, can also start to creep into local politics, into state politics, and the way that you have hyper-targeted foreign capital investments, which, you know, are going to have an influence on the bottom-up political playing field as well.
Yeah, and in fact, the Saudi regime, there's been reporting to the effect that they're interested in finding out to what extent they can get involved in lobbying at the state and local level, particularly in the American heartland, which is very interesting because that has political significance to this relationship that has really become very partisan in nature over the last several years under the young Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who I think is like age 35 or 36.
Absolutely, and why wouldn't they? I mean, you look at our political landscape, you look at the infighting, and you also you see the complete willingness for interested parties, domestic parties, to get in on the action. If they can make money lobbying, if they can make...
And our laws are so weak.
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny, I was talking to a retired CIA officer who was telling me recently that when Citizens United passed, he worked in the Russia desk. He was saying that they were picking up chatter, that the Russians became very interested at that point in what they can suddenly legally do to move money around. And that's not to say that just the Russians are doing it. You know, all sorts of foreign actors are. That was just his area of expertise. But it was so funny to me that they're like completely cognizant of what this means, the fact that you can just flood the political system with money and just, you know, overnight are thinking of how do we take advantage of this.
Absolutely, and you look at the few weak enforcement tools that we do have, things like the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which are of course selectively applied by the Department of Justice,
Right.
which are, even when they are applied, often result in comparatively paltry fines.
It reminds me of like FOIA. It's kind of like, yeah, if you want, like, please adhere to this. We'd like it if you did.
Right, and I think the reason why you see something like FAR in such a weakened state is because everyone wants a piece of the pie, right?
Yeah.
If you target one hostile foreign entity, then those same sanctions, those same fines could be levied someone on your district who's slinging you cash
Right.
and who you need to win re-election.
One of my favorite parts of the story, and this gets to what you were saying before about how they try to use forms of political influence as a cudgel, was how the lobbyist involved in all this tried to say that it was racist to think, hey, maybe Americans should have American water. Maybe that shouldn't go to
I
Saudi
think
Arabia. Can you explain how that?
I think he said something along the lines of, attacking this farm is dishonest at best and racist at worst. I think.
What was the rationale?
Like quote. Well, it was
like you just hate brown people because you would like water to belong to the people that live on top of it?
I think he was pulling out all the stops. I mean, if you read through his testimony, trying to block.
Oh, this was before the state legislature?
Yeah. Trying to block, pretty standard water monitoring in a largely unregulated.
Right. This wasn't
water.
even like you can't sell it. It's kind of like let's just monitor what the levels are.
And he was pulling out all the stops. He was saying this could disclose, proprietary corporate information.
Oh, I love that. Can you talk about that?
You see, looking at his testimony, you hold it up next to the reality that, Arizona's groundwater, I think, has declined by 50 feet in the past 10 years. This is not an intrusive ask. This is not big government coming in and even regulating you. This was the first step of saying, we need more monitoring.
Right. What I love about his testimony to the state legislature about what we can't do this, guys, was the particular language he used. It's very funny. He's like, okay, not now. It's kind of like he's not even going to try to say that it's too far because it's so minimal.
Yeah.
He's like, not now. And then there was another phrase in the article where he was like, oh, it's going to hurt these poor farmers and it's going to hurt their proprietary methods, like going in there with a ruler to measure what the water levels are is like going to be some top secret thing that gets out and ruins your business. Like, what? How does this pass muster with anybody? I don't understand.
Right, and that's the point. It's about basic measures. It is not about barring any foreign investment. It is not about xenophobia. It is about creating a system of checks to ensure that first and foremost, the people who rely on that groundwater are served. And as the article also points out, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors doesn't really have that much jurisdiction in their county over water rights. There are different regulations for Maricopa versus the county where the Fondamont Farm is located. However, it offers an insight into the fact that this person comes out of a career, comes out of a law firm that has a host of clients with specific interests, right? And now he finds himself in a place where he's overseeing a water dispute where the Colorado River is running dry, a town where local residents in Maricopa County used to draw their water from is saying, we're out, the spigot's getting shut off, no more. They're trying to figure out a new plan, whether they should bring in a private utility company to supply water, whether they can strike a deal with folks on the reservation nearby to haul water. But you see the fabric of all these interest groups and you think to yourself, the person who is mediating between these is still employed at a law firm being paid by the biggest interest groups, some of the biggest interest groups in the state. And again, I think that is where a lot of the distrust that, some say began with Trump, but I think goes back much earlier, comes from and began.
Yeah. Once again, reality outpaces our worst satires of how scary and dystopian the future is going to be. I was just thinking, reading your story, about the whole water world picture of like these wars for water. Turns out we're not even going to put up a fight for that water. We're just going to let these foreign multinational corporations hoover it all up.
Yeah, and in fact, water's futures trading has become this massive new industry, right?
Just speculative trading around.
Right, speculative trading and also wildly dangerous experiments into water futures derivatives, complex financial products which are packaged and repackaged and pegged to proprietary information based on California water levels and prices. And the trading of these commodities, at least tied to the California Water Index, has not exploded yet, but it offers a window into what might be coming down the line.
Perfect. Reality once again outstrips our worst dystopias. I was just thinking of water wars, the idea that, as water becomes a precious resource, all these countries are going to be at war with each other. It turns out we're not even going to put up a fight. This stuff is just going to be handed over to foreign multinational corporations for profit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a piece of the end game, if you look at what's happening in California, there have been some tentative dips into the idea of creating these complex water derivatives where you have, a water index based in California, and then you have more and more complex wrapped products and trusts and other financial instruments to speculate off the price of water. And obviously we know from other financial crashes, when you create very complicated...
I don't know what you're talking about.
Financial products, especially tied, we haven't seen them tied to natural resource. We're about to. It's usually a recipe for disaster.
So yeah, there's systemic risk in the trading, but then it's going to drive the price up too for everybody, right?
Yeah, it could certainly drive the price up, and it also opens up a new avenue for foreign investment in what is now an easily tradable financial product in a way that is even easier to dip your beak in than buying up farmland in Arizona.
Awesome. So water as Bitcoin, Watercoin. When are we going to have Watercoin to look forward to?
Big time.
But we'll have Dan there to report on it as it all goes down. I appreciate you joining me, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.